Good morning. Welcome to each of you in Jesus' name. This morning, I'm just wanting to talk a little bit about your greatest grandfather. Your greatest grandfather. How many of you remember your father? Father? Okay, everybody remembers their father. And, a man of God as a family man, he's going to care for his children. He's going to discipline them. We kind of know what a good father does. How about your grandfather? How many of you remember your grandfather? Grandfather. Okay. Everybody pretty much. How about your great-grandfather? At least one great-grandfather. How many of you remember a great-grandfather? So you should. A great-grandfather. You remember any great-grandfathers? Very vaguely. Yeah. Yeah, I know a couple names for my children. I know my great-grandmothers. My great-grandmothers lived longer than my great-grandfathers. What's the next one back you can remember in your line? The next one back. So if you can't remember, so if we go on back, way back through time, the next one's going to be Noah, right? Or the next one that you can remember is Noah. And then back to Adam. Well, sometimes when reading Scripture, you get to these genealogies and you're just like, well, this is boring. But genealogies and history offer structure, proof, and context in understanding where we come from in the timeline of things. I'd like to go to Luke chapter 3. Luke chapter 3, verse 23 and 24. We're not going to read this whole genealogy. And I'll just tell you, I think this is a really big deal. Jesus was about 30 years old when he began his public ministry, and Jesus was known as the son of Joseph. Joseph was the son of Heli. Heli was the son of Mathat. Mathat was the son of Levi. Levi was the son of Melchi. Melchi was the son of Jannai. Jannai was the son of Joseph. And I'm going to stop there. And then we're going to jump down to verse 36. Verse 36, Shelah was the son of Canaan. Canaan was the son of Arphaxad. Arphaxad was the son of Shem. Shem was the son of Noah. Noah was the son of Lamech. Lamech was the son of Methuselah. Methuselah was the son of Enoch. Enoch was the son of Jared. Jared was the son of Mahalalel. Mahalalel was the son of Kenan. Kenan was the son of Enosh. Enosh was the son of Seth. Seth was the son of Adam. And Adam was the son of God. Who's your greatest grandfather? Think about it. The hair on my arm stood up when I realized, I kind of knew that, but like you say, can my children come up here for a second? My boys. All my boys could come up here. Bring Gideon up here. You can see. Up here, Gideon. You pick them up. You say they all look a little like me. They all look like my sons, some would say. Do we look like God's creation, created in the image of God? Y'all can go back now. Thank you. Remember, it says in God's image He created them. So Genesis 1:27 to 28. I'd like to go there just quickly. Genesis chapter 1, verse 27. Hang on a second. Genesis 1, not Genesis 1, verse 27 and 28. So God created human beings in His own image. In the image of God created He them, male and female He created them. And then God blessed them and said, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and govern it. Reign over the fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, and all the animals that scurry along the ground. So, God has created us in His image and with His DNA, in His image. Yes, God is a spirit. And someday we will be like Him, more like Him than we are now, but He still is our Father. He still is our greatest grandfather. And we have to understand that. And for some reason, this is a concept that unbelievers don't like. They're uncomfortable with it. Jesus is like, the religious leaders thought he was blaspheming, that he would say that he was related to God. God's son's like, you can't say that. And we're going to get to that here shortly. I'd like to now go, let's see here, a little change up. So John chapter 3, verses 16 and 17. Y'all know that one. For God so loved the world. So if God is a family man, He loves His children, and it brings Him great joy. I think I got some stuff. I'd like to go to Luke 15. Let's go to Luke 15. Is actually where I want to go. This whole chapter is just full, chock full of God's love for us. So, I'm going to start off here. It says let's read the first verse. The tax collectors and the other notorious sinners often came to listen to Jesus teach, and this made the Pharisees and the teachers of the religious law complain that He was associated with such sinful people, even eating with them. So, we have our Father is a very holy God. A very holy God. What does holiness mean? That's another concept that I want to teach us what holiness is. If we are His children, if we are His sons as we are adopted back, we were estranged sons, but we're adopted back into His family, how do we have that holiness of God? And Jesus should be our perfect example of holiness, should He not? Think about the Word of God. If you look on the front of your Bible, it says, my Bible says Holy Bible. What does that mean, holy? I think we have this idea that it means something really, really, really clean and something really untouchable, maybe. And yes, there's a degree of that, but I want to show you a few stories of what this holy Jesus did. So He's eating with these people. He was associated with such sinful people, and the Pharisees and teachers of the law complained. They didn't like it. So Jesus told them this story. If a man has 100 sheep and one of them gets lost, what will he do? Won't he leave the 99 others in the wilderness and go search for the one that is lost until he finds it? And when he has found it, he will joyfully carry it home on his shoulders. And when he arrives, he will call together his friends and neighbors, saying, Ho hum, does anybody want this sheep that is hard to keep in? No, that's not what it says. When he arrives, he will call together his friends and neighbors, saying, Rejoice with me, because I have found my lost sheep. In the same way, there is more joy in heaven over one lost sinner who repents and returns to God than over 99 others who are righteous and haven't strayed away. Brings Him great joy. He loves His children. He loves the lost ones. It brings Him great joy. I love my boys. You realize that God loves all of us. I love all my children. Love my girl too, by the way. And then there's another story. There's 3 stories in a row. And with parables, you can read too much into them, but he puts 3 stories right in a row. And you can say, okay, here's the core things from each of these 3 stories, kind of all saying the same thing. Don't want to read too much into them, but the first one here, notice there's great joy over the one that was lost. The next story, verse 8. Or suppose, parable of the lost coin, or suppose a woman has 10 silver coins and loses one. Won't she light a lamp and sweep the entire house and search carefully until she finds it? And when she finds it, she will call on her friends and neighbors and say, Rejoice with me, because I have found my lost coin. In the same way, there is joy in the presence of God's angels when even one sinner repents. Sounds like she spent all day sweeping, getting candles, searching. Maybe she should have just gone back to her job at Piggly Wiggly and earned another coin. The the lesson he's teaching us here is that the lost ones are worth finding. He didn't create anyone that were supposed to be lost. And then John 3:16, starting to quote that, for God so loved who? The world, that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. For God sent not his Son into the world to what? Condemn the world. Didn't send it to condemn, but that the world through him might be saved, I believe is how it is. And so you realize, well, that's actually the mission. How do we demonstrate the holiness of God? I just want to talk just a little bit about, we have a Father. He's a very holy Father. And Moses in Numbers chapter 20 had a failure. And Moses was told he could not go into the promised land because he did not demonstrate the holiness of God. What does that mean? And I'd like us to think about all these stories that Jesus is telling. The holiness of God, what does it mean? We have another one. Another story after the parable of the lost coin. Verse 11. Luke 15, verse 11. Parable of the lost son. To illustrate the point further, Jesus told them this story. A man had 2 sons. The younger son told his father, I want my share of your estate now before you die. So his father agreed to divide his wealth between his sons. And a few days later, his younger son packed all his belongings and moved to a distant land, and there he wasted all his money in wild living. And about the time his money ran out, a great famine swept over the land, and he began to starve, and he persuaded a local farmer to hire him, and the man sent him into his fields to feed the pigs. And the young man became so hungry that even the pods he was feeding the pigs looked good to him, but no one gave him anything. When he finally came to his senses, he said to himself, at home, even the hired servants have food enough to spare, and here I am, dying of hunger. I will go home to my father and say, Father, I have sinned against both heaven and you, and I am no longer worthy of being called your son. Please take me on as a hired servant. So he returned home to his father, and while he was still a long way off, his father saw him coming. Filled with love and compassion, he ran to his son and embraced him and kissed him. And his son said to him, Father, I have sinned against both heaven and you, and I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But his father said to the servants, quick, bring the finest robe in the house and put it on him. Get a ring for his finger and sandals for his feet, and kill the calf. We have been fattening. We must celebrate with a feast. For this son of mine was dead and has now returned to life. He was lost, but now is found. So the party began. And meanwhile, the older son was in the fields working. And when he returned home, he heard music and dancing in the house, and he asked one of the servants what was going on. Your brother is back, he was told, and your father has killed the fattened calf. We are celebrating because of his safe return. And the older brother was angry and wouldn't go in. His father came out and begged him, but he replied, all these years I've slaved for you and never once refused to do a single thing you told me to, and in all that time you never gave me even one young goat for a feast with my friends. Yet when this son of yours comes back after squandering your money on prostitutes, you celebrate by killing the fattened calf. His father said to him, look, dear son, you have always stayed by me, and everything I have is yours. We had to celebrate this happy day, for your brother was dead and has come back to life. He was lost, but now is found. Wow. While he was yet a long way off. Not while he was near. While he was yet a long way off. The Father's love is while we were yet sinners, while we needed help. And Jesus is teaching the people here that were upset at him that he was spending time with people that weren't lovely. He's like, you're spending time, you're being unholy. And he's saying, this is what holiness is. This is what holiness is to love the person that is a long way off. Perhaps coming, but is a long way off. And this last part of the story, sometimes like, why don't we just leave this part of the story off? The part where the other son was not happy. the truth of the matter is, there's people that will say we should. Well, there's people in Jesus' time and now that feel like that is improper to rejoice when the lost come in, and the effort. I like the parable of the coin. It talks about the effort that was given, the long way off, the effort that was given to go out, to find, to bring them back in the lost sheep. You think it was just he went out in the dark in the night or whatever, the shepherd, to find that lost sheep. It took effort to do this because he cared. He did not care about the son that was there. He didn't. Of course he cared about it. They were going to be inheriting, but that's not the point here. And so why did Jesus bother to tell them all this stuff if he had it all under control already? If Jesus is the shepherd and Jesus is the woman seeking for the coin, and Jesus is the father looking for the lost son, then why did he bother to teach them? Because we are that Jesus, the people. Are we willing to go out and look for the lost? Verse 2, let's see here. Luke 15, how do we demonstrate the holiness of God? Jesus is our perfect example. And in verses 1 and 2, does it sound like holiness, what Jesus was doing? Not to the way we often think about it. Verses 3 to 7. I want to note there the rejoicing. The rejoicing in every one of those things was this rejoicing that came. Verses 8 to 10, the great effort. I just want to make sure I don't miss anything. 11 to 32, verses 11 to 32. We are this estranged son that is pointed out here. We must leave our riotous living. We must leave living for ourselves. That is true. But God loves us while we're yet a long way off. We must come as well. Verse 20. I already talked about that. I'd really like to highlight again that in verse 22 to 24, but his father said to the servants, quick, bring the finest robe in the house and put it on him. Get a ring for his finger and sandals for his feet, and kill the calf that we've been fattening. We must celebrate. Keep all these stories in your mind. Okay? Matthew chapter 7. Matthew chapter 7. This is on prayer. Remember, we have a Father. And Matthew chapter 7, verses 7 to 11. Keep on asking and you will receive what you ask for. Keep on seeking and you will find. Keep on knocking and the door will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives, everyone who seeks finds, and to everyone who knocks the door will be opened. You parents, if your children ask for a loaf of bread, do you give them a stone instead? Or if they ask for a fish, do you give them a snake? Of course not. So if you sinful people know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your heavenly Father give good gifts to those who ask Him? This is not a hypothetical story about a father and a son or children. This is about our Father who wants to give His people good gifts, not bad gifts. Let's go to Numbers 20, verses 1 to 13. What went wrong here that Moses had such a big punishment? Numbers 20, verses 1 to 13. In the first month of the year, the whole community of Israel arrived in the wilderness of Zin and camped at Kadesh. While they were there, Miriam died and was buried. And there was no water for the people to drink at that place, so they rebelled against Moses and Aaron. Now, it's kind of nice to have water, isn't it? Seems like that'd be a good thing to pray to God about, based on the verses that we just read, asking God for the things that we need. I mean, it's a little understandable that they were struggling, but I would have struggled. And the people blamed Moses and said, if we had only had died in the Lord's presence with our brothers. So where was the Lord's presence exactly? Supposed to be there, because it says that Moses and Aaron actually went before the Lord's presence, which was right there. They were a bit ignorant, and yet they were asking. So back to verse 3, going into verse 4. Why have you brought the congregation of the Lord's people into the wilderness to die along with our livestock? Why did you make us leave Egypt and bring us here to this terrible place? This land has no grain, no figs, no grapes, no pomegranates, and no water to drink. And Moses and Aaron turned away from the people and went to the entrance of the tabernacle, where they fell face down to the ground. Then the glorious presence of the Lord appeared to them, and the Lord said to Moses, you and Aaron must take the staff and assemble the entire community. As the people watch, speak to the rock over there, and it will pour out its water. You will provide enough water for the rock to satisfy the whole community and their livestock. So Moses did as he was told. He took the staff from the place where it was kept before the Lord. Then he and Aaron summoned the people to come and gather at the rock. Listen, you rebels, he shouted. Must we bring water from this rock? It almost sounds like they would have liked to have given a serpent instead of a loaf of bread. I always thought that they were kept out because they didn't hit the rock. But when you start to understand the heart of God that has wants to bring the best robe out and the gold ring, the heart of God that asks us to come and pray and bring our needs, should have they not said, let's talk to God about it? And brought these things to God and understood that God cared about them and led them to understand that God will meet them and provide for their needs on the road that they were on. And you see, why? Why were they kept out? Let's keep reading. Listen, you rebels, he shouted. Must we bring the water from this rock? And then Moses raised his arm and struck the rock twice with the staff, and water gushed out. So the entire community and their livestock drank their fill. But the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, because you did not trust me enough to demonstrate my holiness to the people of Israel, you will not lead them into the land I am giving. The place was known as the waters of Meribah, which means arguing, because there the people of Israel argued with the Lord, and there he demonstrated his holiness among them. How did he demonstrate his holiness? He brought water. But the heart that they had was not the heart of the prodigal's father, as they led here. They were impatient. They were done. And when we realize what demonstrating holiness means, that when Jesus taught it in those 3 little parables, demonstrating holiness, it's important to remember what the whole Word of God. You want to know what the Word of God is? Hold your Bible. The holy. What does holy mean? It's compassion for people. He loves us so much. He loved the whole world. He gave His only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in Him should not perish. And then also He sent His Son not into the world to condemn the world, that the world through Him might be saved. That is holiness. Okay? We're going to get to a little the other side that you're used to. Holy living as the sons of God. Hebrews 12. such a meaty chapter here as well. Hebrews chapter 12. So if we have had a good father, and we'll talk here about discipline. A good father loves us and guides us and disciplines us as well. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a huge crowd of witnesses to the life of faith, let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up, and let us run with endurance the race God has set before us. We do this by keeping our eyes on Jesus, the champion who initiates and perfects our faith. Because of the joy awaiting him, he endured the cross, disregarding his shame. Now he is seated in the place of honor beside God's throne. Think of all the hostility he endured from sinful people. Then you won't become weary and give up. After all, you have not yet given your lives in your struggle against sin. And have you forgotten the encouraging words God spoke to you as his children? He said, "My child, don't make light of the Lord's discipline, and don't give up when he corrects you, for the Lord disciplines those he loves, and he punishes each one he accepts as his child. As you endure this divine discipline, remember that God is treating you as his own children. Who ever heard of a child who is never disciplined by its father? If God doesn't discipline you as he does all of his children, it means that you are illegitimate and are not really his children at all. Since we respected our earthly fathers who disciplined us, shouldn't we submit even more to the discipline of the Father of our spirits and live forever? For our earthly fathers disciplined us for a few years, doing the best they knew how, but God's discipline is always good for us, so that we might share in his holiness. No discipline is enjoyable while it is happening. It is painful, but afterward there will be a peaceful harvest of right living for those who are trained in this way. So, take a new grip with your tired hands, strengthen your weak knees, and mark out a straight path for your feet, so that those who are weak and lame will not fall, but become strong." And a few more verses. 14, work at living in peace with everyone, and work at living a holy life, for those who are not holy will not see the Lord. Look after each other so that none of you fails to receive the grace of God. Watch out that no poisonous root of bitterness grows up to trouble you, corrupting many. And make sure that no one is immoral or godless like Esau, who traded his birthright as the firstborn son for a single meal. You know that afterward, when he wanted his father's blessing, he was rejected. It was too late for repentance, even though he begged with bitter tears. So, we're going to go through Hebrews 1, a few thoughts. Verse 1, strip off. So, some things for living as sons of God, holy living. Strip off the weight, especially the sin that will slow us down. If you're going to run a big race, you're not going to be doing some things that will just make you have half the energy at the end. You're going to be able to run a lot faster and further if you take off the extra unnecessary weight. So, strip off the extra weight. Verse 2, keep your eyes on Jesus, the champion who initiates and perfects our faith. And remember, John 3:16 and 17, what was Jesus? He's running ahead of us. What was his mission? That all men, he's not I can't jump into that verse. He's not to condemn, but to save the world. And then verses 5 to 7 talks about discipline, godly discipline. He was a family man. Our Father is a Father that loves us dearly. He is not a dead and gone Father. And he left his will. Would we not check if our great-grandfather had left a will and he decided to leave some stuff for his great-grandchildren, would we not maybe check it out and see what there was? I mean, it would be interesting, especially if he was a good man. Well, God has left us so much instruction how to live and how to inherit his kingdom. Truly, he wants a relationship. Verse 8. Verse 8. So, if God does not discipline you as he does all of his children, it means that you are illegitimate and you are not his children at all. So, no discipline, no sonship. If you're not being corrected by God, you are not a child of God, is what this is saying. And God might try, but you say, I'm not willing. You can walk away. You can say, I'm not willing to receive that instruction, God. You're an illegitimate son. Verse 10. Discipline leads to holiness. We might share in His holiness. Like different kinds of holiness. The kind of holiness I talked about, but also the kind of holiness where it's talking about here in a couple of verses about not being like Esau, just living for the passions and pleasures of this life. Verse 14. This one here was really the core verses of what I was looking for. Work at living in peace with everyone. And work at living a holy life. Moses and Aaron could have taken a lesson. What does it mean to live at peace? Be a minister of reconciliation, to bring people to God. If Moses and Aaron could have brought people to God, if they would have said, we're going to go to God and we're going to see what He has to say. Instead, they were more like Jonah with a bad attitude about the situation. And they made God look like an unwilling, ungrateful, unwilling to help Father. God still showed them His holiness and His desire to help them, in spite of them bringing out the not royal robe in the ring, if you will. Think of the parable of the unjust steward in Luke chapter 16, verses 1 to 13. We're supposed to make friends of the mammon of the unrighteousness, and this whole living holy of the things that God has given us, we're supposed to help people out. Help those in need. Verse 15. So we're demonstrating a life of holiness to those that we're leading. We don't want to be leading them to a false impression of what God is. If we show stinginess to our neighbors, we're probably not showing them the true holiness of God. You watch. Otherwise, God would have not even come to help us. Verse 15. Look after each other. It says, look after each other so that none of you fails to receive the grace of God. Care for each other. Watch out that no poisonous root of bitterness grows up. Bitterness and unforgiveness is kind of like what Moses and Aaron had. They were not happy about the situation. And do you understand? There was strong emotion. They had strong emotion. Anger. Versus the father of the prodigal son had strong emotion of running out to welcome him. Joy. Great joy. And we need to have that. The problem is if you get bitterness and a lack of forgiveness, we're going to more likely have the anger emotion, not the joy emotion when someone comes back. Verse 16, don't be immoral or godless like Esau. Don't entertain the flesh, the passions. There's verses I don't have here, but the passions that will, it's not just talking about lust, it's talking about all the things that keep us from God, that keep us from loving the things that He loves. And I appreciated some of the songs we sang, Children of the Heavenly Father, safely in His bosom gather. Can we do that for the others in need? I appreciated the songs that were led this morning. And verse 20, I want to go to verse 17. This one's a little bit of a tricky verse. You know that afterward when he wanted his father, let's talk about Esau, he wanted his father's blessing, he was rejected. It was too late for repentance, even though he begged with tears. Well, we are still in the time of choosing. Don't misunderstand this verse to say that we can't choose. Well, the prodigal son, Jesus told that story. He had chosen to go out. And when he came back, he was welcome. There will be a time when we will be those that choose Esau's path won't have a choice, but I believe we still are in the time of choosing for those that God is calling. And then verse 24, you have come to Jesus, the one who mediates the new covenant between God and people, and to the sprinkled blood, and he speaks forgiveness instead of crying out for vengeance. Very much like John chapter 3, verse 16 and 17. This Jesus speaks forgiveness, not vengeance, like the blood of Abel. Why? Because he loves us. Verse 14. Again, we already talked about verse 14, but I'm going to go back. This work at living a holy life. For those who are not holy will not see the Lord. So, will not see the Lord. I know we've talked about Matthew 25 recently. Matthew 25, the judgment, the great white throne judgment, when the sheep and the goats are being judged. This will not see the Lord. So the sheep are going to see the Lord and the goats will not. What is this holy living? The actual judgment day talks about how they fed the poor, how they clothed the naked, how they invited the strangers into their home, how they visited the sick and those in prison. It has to be related, at least to a certain degree. The parables that Jesus taught, the people that Jesus was with. He was with people that the Pharisees said, you shouldn't be with, because you're getting to be unclean being around these people. And he said, here's a couple stories. He was demonstrating the holiness and love of our God. We'll need to have another message on living as sons of God. There's a lot about this that I wasn't able to cover. I think we have a hard time viewing ourselves as God's sons. Honestly, I think we view ourselves maybe as God's pet dog or something, like on a whole different level. Like we can be loyal and love Him. Maybe it's just me. But to really, really understand what God has called us into, that we are His children as we are born again, that He created us in the beginning. We know that. But we feel like God is so far away, so high above us. And yes, He is omniscient, omnipresent, all these things that we are not. He's our Creator, in whom we live and breathe and have our being. But we are not His dog. We are not His loved pets. I know people that love their pets about that much, but this is a whole different situation than that. He loves the lost ones, all of us. We are not just His Son, we are also joint heirs with Jesus. And I mentioned earlier, the unbelievers tend to react to this. The Pharisees said, well, you can't say that. Like that's blasphemy. I mean, God is He is a very holy God and a very loving God, and we will never compare. And Jesus, God loved Him. When Jesus was baptized and the dove came down and said, this is my beloved Son in whom I am well pleased. Why? Because He came to the world not to condemn the world, but that the world through Him might be saved again. That's why I loved Him. Over in our Philippians 2, because he became the servant of all and came to love the heart of God, that is why God highly exalted Him. In Revelation, when the call comes out, who is worthy to open the book? Who is worthy? Who is the most holy? It's the one who gave the most to help the poor. It's the one who gave His life to forgive those that were killing Him. You want to be holy. Demonstrate this holiness to others. Jesus quoted from Psalm 82:6 when they were accusing Him of being a blasphemer. Let's go to Psalm 82 to finish out. We're going to read Psalm 82 because it's very instructive. The Psalm of Asaph. Psalm 82. God presides over heaven's court. He pronounces judgment on the heavenly beings. How long will you hand down unjust decisions by favoring the wicked? Give justice to the poor and the orphan. Uphold the rights of the oppressed and the destitute. Rescue the poor and helpless. Deliver them from the grasp of evil people. But these oppressors know nothing. They are so ignorant. They wander about in darkness while the whole world is shaken to the core. I say you are gods. You are children of the Most High. But you will die like mere mortals and fall like every other ruler. Rise up, O God, and judge the earth, for all nations belong to you. So, the verse that brought me here is the I say you are gods. It's verse 6. You are children of the Most High. Jesus quoted this verse when they were offended at him saying that he was the Son of God. And so, what exactly is this passage saying? And so it says, God presides, back to verse 1. God presides over where? Heaven's court. Verse 2. How long will you hand down unjust decisions? That is not God. That is us. The context comes later on. You are sons of God. You are God's. Like, we are God's children. The challenge that the psalmist is writing here is, as God's children, how long are you going to give unjust judgments that favor the wicked, not care for the poor and the orphans? When are you going to start upholding the rights of the oppressed and the destitute, rescuing the poor and the helpless, delivering from the grasp of evil people? But these people, it says, these oppressors know nothing. They are so ignorant. Like, I'm afraid we don't even sometimes open our eyes to see the needs around us. We're so ignorant. It says they're so ignorant, they don't even realize they're oppressing people. Have you ever opened your eyes in our town? And I drove around Meg's recently, like, well, this town needs some love. It's like, there's people in need everywhere. It says they wander, the last part of verse 5, the ignorant people. They wander in darkness while the whole world is shaken to the core. They don't even realize that there's opportunity everywhere. They wander in darkness while the world is shaken to the core. And so, Psalm says, you are God's. We are to reign with Christ. We were to rule. We were to take care of these people until He returns. How will you and I demonstrate the holiness of God? The holiness of our Abba Father, God. Let's not be ignorant. Pray that Father would open our eyes to see how we can serve Him well. I've asked the youth to sing How Deep the Father's Love for Us. So if they can come do that at this time, please.
to glory. Behold the man upon a cross, my sin upon his shoulders. Ashamed, I hear my mocking voice call out among the scoffers. It was my sin that held him there until it was accomplished. His dying breath has brought me life. I know that it is finished. How deep the Father's love for us, such love the world has known. His grace is out with righteousness and brings us life through Jesus Christ our Lord. I will not boast in anything, no gifts, no power, no wisdom, but I will boast in Jesus Christ, his death and resurrection. Why should I gain from his reward? I cannot give an answer, but this I know with all my heart: his wounds have paid my ransom. How deep the Father's love for us, such love has known. His grace has with righteousness and brings us life through Jesus Christ our Lord, and brings us life through Jesus Christ our Lord.
Doug, can you close this out? Can you take away from mine? Can you close this out? Sure. Takeaways and prayers.